Welcome back to another episode of What About Dat? My name's Adair, and with the help of my friend Jen, we'll be going over Wynonna Earp, episode 205, Let's Pretend We're Strangers. So sit back, relax, and ask yourself, hey, what about dat? Alright, so this episode was pretty good. Hey guys, welcome back to this show. Sorry for the late upload. Got a little sicky poo, life happens, but we're bringing it to you now, going through our, discussion on Let's Pretend We're Strangers, episode 205. Jen, how you feeling about it?
I really enjoyed this episode. I felt like there were so many elements that made it great. This week, we are brought right into the episode with Brotherhood of Arms, these firemen dressed in black bubonic plague mask, and they're basically dramatically taking the head of a man who seemingly is infected by black goo. And these firemen we're seeing them for the first time. The main fire captain, his name is Ewan. What'd you think of that guy?
Ewan's awesome. Played by Brendan Fuhr. I really like his presence. It's that menacing, but at the same time, you understand he's a leader. The cool thing about firefighters, in a lot of shows, they either could be the bad guy, they could be that kind of good bad guy. It's like, ooh, you're hot, but you're bad, that kind of thing, which is right up Wynonna's alley in this show. And he gave that presence. He didn't feel like he was too helpful. He didn't feel like he was super villainy. I think it's really cool that they got that kind of blend down.
What I really liked about these firemen is that we talked about Wynonna existing below the plane of the pedestrian in this demon hunting world. These firemen are in the world of the pedestrian world of purgatory, and what we discovered as an audience was that they were aware of this growing threat, and that they in themselves have been taking it upon themselves to kind of deal with it. Their order does. And we discussed last week, it was brought to our attention by Neely that he was aware of what's going on out in the town, and the possessions and the demons. And what we're learning is that the town is actually much more aware than we originally thought they were. And I thought that was great. And I also thought the firemen, they knew something. They had information that our team of superheroes, Wynonna and her crew, didn't actually have till much later, until this episode.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really I love that perspective of Wynonna discovering something new, and people already knowing it.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. I think it's actually really cool too that they made them the villain of the week. That's not really the villain. I like this kind of frenemy setup that they have going on. I think that it is cool that now that I think about it, I find it fascinating. In the episode, even though, it's pretty brief, Jeremy tells us that Black Badge is now missing, and we have now been introduced to a new sector of men and a group who has the ability to fight the same kind of powers. We have a new group coming in. So I actually just realized that, they ushered one out to bring one in, and I think that's actually going to be very telling later in the episodes.
Right, and we learned a little bit more about what the overarching threat for the season is, which is this goo. And what we learned was that it has the capacity to infect or to possess multiple people. It's not just Waverly or Wynonna who are just transferring this thing. Other people can get it.
Yeah.
So that was a huge point that we discovered.
I think it's kind of cool because, Licata, she unfortunately had the mishap of, being summoned by the goo. Waverly said she heard it was a perfect black pool, and she was summoned to it. She was called to it. And Licata, the same thing. When they were trying to figure it out in the office, she got summoned to it, and she touched it. And the guy in the beginning, he touched it. And it's this transferable parasite, and I think that's kind of wild in its own. And I also like the fact that the Brotherhood, being an ancient kind of group as well, like they go back in the history, it's this kind of Mason type feel, And I think that Juan Carlo, or JC, his involvement of trying to tie all this together, we have a guy who disappears out of nowhere but seems to know things. The fact that he is on our Scooby's team's side is really interesting. Hey, you need to save Wynonna because this brotherhood, their job is to make sure this goo doesn't get any further. That's their job, and like you said, they have more knowledge than the group does. I like that Wynonna even says, oh, you're here to protect the River Triangle. Well, where you been at? We've been here a season, haven't seen you. So I thought that was actually really cool.
And we discovered also that they were responsible for eradicating the black goo. Black Badge was responsible for eradicating black goo, so there was no leftover specimen. So and I thought that was another piece of information we were given that we have yet to receive. Also, Agent Lucado, she was kind of our learning curve, We didn't know other people could be infected by this goo in that way. We now know the goo operates like a siren. So that, unfortunately, she was short for this world. But but we learned something.
That was fabulous.
Right, that was a great way to go out. Can I just say?
If you're gonna go out, go out with your head exploding. Like, it was very, and it was very like old school Aliens. Like, it really reminded me of like that nice, perfect. Like, that was perfect Sci-Fi Channel for me. Like, just the right amount of CGI and gross and practical like application. Like, it really did feel like they just had a fake head, they put it on a timer, they set the camera back outside the office, and they exploded it like we're on Mythbusters. I thought that was like I thought that was pretty awesome.
This week's budget went into heads.
Heads will roll, heads rolling, and heads exploding. I thought it was great. Okay, so let's get into really the other group of our our cast of bandits. We have Wynonna just good morning, opening the window, Goononna, if you will, and making this disgusting ass smoothie. Emily really nailed it with the gross factor in this episode. We thought spider eating and lipstick chewing was gross. I mean, right up there with the incest, we have a rat smoothie.
This season has so much to offer. I think what like was the EO factor was the tail after the blendage. You know what I mean? The tail coming out
with his like half the booty still like attached to the tail, and it's just like it's a mess. Mind you, we live in New York, so like we see rats all the time. And nobody wants that in their shake. But let me just tell you, those are probably even healthier rats than in New York. So like, I don't have time. But like watching that and watching the interaction between Goononna and Waverly was really, really interesting. Bravo, this whole episode, I can say it multiple times, to Melanie and the slight shifts between Goononna and Wynonna. It's like that. She's mocking and smiling and being this kind of cheeky nymph almost, and then you see the pain of like, I'm trying to fight it, I'm so sorry, I'm trying, and then she gets sucked back in, and that is just really, really fantastic acting, and going to a place of being kind of in that bipolar, back and forth state, which probably after we learn that Melanie's pregnant now, was probably easier being bipolar. Really going back from, different hormone phases, it's probably actually was something she could draw on within that acting. I thought that was really great.
I thought that the goo version of Wynonna was a lot more vicious than the goo version of Waverly. You could really see that it took her a lot quicker than it did Waverly, and that was a point that I found really interesting, was that there was another thing we learned this episode, was Waverly and her ability to hold off the effect of the parasite much longer than Wynonna, because we got a vicious Wynonna. It wasn't Waverly as the goo Waverly. She was underhanded, she lied, she was sneaky, she was eating metal. Goo Wynonna was just flat out vicious. She just said mean things. I was more concerned that she would do something physically violent to Waverly, and they did bring us to that point. So it was interesting seeing how this thing affected the worst parts of those characters.
Yeah, I thought, yeah, exactly. And it really was cool to see the dichotomy of how the goo plays on their dark side. You know, it does show that, you know, Wynonna's more open about her dark side. She doesn't have any qualms about the fact that she's not the perfect egg, you know, and Waverly, who tends to be the perfect egg, to be acting out was kind of interesting. Like, it was her first taste of being kind of like Wynonna in that negative way. And Wynonna was more, you know, that goo was really reaching in the inner depth. So I thought that was really cool. Waverly in the chair and getting around to Dolls, and Dolls coming and going, hey, you're the goo. And she's like, you a little late, bro. Already done been passed on, you know, and I thought that was really cute. I thought that whole interaction was nice. You know, he had to check to make sure that she was really Waverly by asking, what's your favorite food? And, you know, she answers and he goes, no, what's your real favorite food? So, like, the fact that they've had this conversation about their favorite foods, I think is very adorable. You know,
I thought that was super brother-sister adorable.
It really was, you know, and I think that is just so precious, and it really shows how close Dolls has gotten to that family and how much he's opened up to have a conversation as silly as what's your favorite food, you know? And it kind of shows a cool, you know, difference between Doc's relationship with Waverly and Dolls. Dolls and when Waverly seemed very brother sister, you know, big bro, little sis kind of, you know, that thing. Doc seems more like an old friend. Like, I feel like Doc and Waverly are very similar in a lot of ways, and it's almost like Waverly's like the beginning, how maybe Doc was when he was young, you know?
Yeah, that's interesting.
And I feel like Waverly, if she had eternal life and had seen some of the stuff, she'll be just as kind of snarky but wise yet kind and gentle like Doc is, you know? So I don't know, I see a lot of similarities between those two characters, and so I just like the fact that Dolls and Waverly are just kind of a little bit more of a younger energy and not so old soul feeling. And just that whole moment was adorable, and that's really showcased it for me.
Right. And, you know, so the Wynonna, as this possessed entity, goes with Doc, and they go to the firehouse to investigate for Agent Lucado. And it was fabulous to see that, because we see this possessed Wynonna, right? And she's doing all these erratic things with Doc, and in the moment, you know, it's really Doc on his own who deciphers that something is wrong with her. You know what I mean? What'd you think of that scene?
I thought it was really cool. I actually really like the fact that in the show they are good at cutting to the next thing fairly well. Like, it's not really random, but it's always random. Like, after the, you know, Waverly and Dolls issue, then we have Dolls and Lucado fighting so that Waverly can tell them to stop fighting so we can save Wynonna. And then we go into this Wynonna, you know, to see Wynonna being a hot mess. And I like those smooth transitions of that, because then we get to that firehouse and we're like, oh, she's going to create some havoc, you know, and
especially under the influence of that parasite. Yeah.
Exactly. And a few things. Okay. I love the fact that Doc knows Wynonna well enough to know something's up, but he's also a poker player. He knows how to keep his face straight. Everybody kind of, when you watch the episode, it seems like he realizes it's not Wynonna after they have coffee and all the other stuff after the firehouse. I think he figured it out before that, and he was just playing it cool, trying to figure out something, because once again, he's a gunslinger. He knows not to leave his house without his gun. He knows that Wynonna's had that strapped to her leg, so as soon as she's leaving the house without a freaking gun on her, the peacemaker out of all guns, he's like, oh, something's up. So I like the fact that he kind of just let it happen. Also, I like the fact that the Brotherhood can tell when someone has that particular goo inside of them. Their fraction is to deal with that goo. So the fact that when she kind of snarked off, he instantly goes, she's infested. Like, she has it, you know? And I was like, was really kind of telling.
I thought that was one thing I would like to see how it gets explained in later episodes. That was a question I had immediately as soon as I saw that line, was how does Ewan have the ability to tell who and who isn't affected? What is his secret ability, or how does he decipher it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he didn't know Wynonna, and he didn't know anything about the situation, but he just knew.
Well, he does know Wynonna, but she doesn't know him, you know. He knows the Earp. It's like, you know, it's part of that jab of like, oh, well, you're not the real Earp heir. He was talking about Willa. He's like, well, I had to kill her because come to find out, Willa was the first person to have that goo inside of her, and that's why she was acting the way she was acting. So if they would have known it was that goo, they could have saved her earlier. So I found that really fascinating as well.
I really enjoyed that dig he made, and it was such an asshole-ish dig towards Wynonna. It was probably my second favorite dig of the whole episode, and I liked the contention that they got off to the wrong start. I liked that he was constantly working out. You know, the firemen are just constantly working out. They reminded me kind of like a fraternity of frat boys in college, a little bit more responsible, but yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
yeah,
you wanted to talk about real quick the kind of triangle between Doc and Dolls, and
yeah, you know, I feel like we've been away so long from Dolls this season. We barely really got him back into the episodes last episode. And I myself was like, you know, who is this man? What's his place in the protagonist's life? And I felt like I'm starting to really appreciate this character so much more, especially in this episode. You can really see that he's a man of action. He's a man who, as soon as he finds out something's wrong with Wynonna, is going to take dire action. And I feel like it pertains to Dolls, you know. Dolls, to me, reminds me almost of a male version of Wynonna. They're both kind of snarky. They're both jaded. They're both a shoot-first mentality, you know? And I'm going to go on ahead and, to me, I think they make a lot of romantic sense because they can just get each other because their first instinct is almost the same whenever they're in any form of danger. And they're both the first to, go to a dark place, embrace the darkness within them, rather than to... that's their means of how they approach a problem. So that's my thought in terms of Dolls and this love triangle and pertains to Wynonna. I'm gonna let you speak to Doc because he's the other male voice in this, and why should he win the heart of Wynonna? Adair.
Well, you were saying with Doc, I find there's a compassion and a learning curve. You know, everybody says with a couple you want to be able to become better and grow and learn. You know, the guy is not undead, I'm sorry, just eternally living at the moment. And I think that he brings a lot of wisdom and a lot of balance. Like I said, he reminds me of a very old, eternal Waverly, just a male version. And I think that we see Wynonna work so well and learn from Waverly in so many ways. I think she learns the same way with Doc. You know, I think that their kind of love and care for each other is more visceral and more like on a deeper level than just, oh, you're hot, or, oh, it's, you know, animalistic like Dolls is, you know. I think that in regards to the romance and everything, you know, Doc Holliday was Wyatt's best friend. Like, he thought they were brothers. He already had this, you know, deep kindred spirit connection with Wyatt, and so it just kind of goes to show that there's going to be that same kind of connection in some facet with Wynonna, you know, whether he knew it or not. And I think that's actually really kind of cool.
Yeah, and now to add to the triangle, we can have a square with Ewan being the asshole, just being thrown in, the asshole with the great abs.
I think that both Doc and Dolls need a little competition and a little bit of something going on. Now that we, you know, have this new Wynonna with her pregnancies and craziness, I think it'll be really fascinating to see these men orbit her, you know, and it's that they kind of set it up. I mean, Melanie has chemistry with literally everything. So I think it's going to be really fascinating to see that dynamic, to see how the fraction of the Brotherhood comes into that and everything like that. I think it'll be hilarious. Giving a little, side talk about something completely different. I want to give a shout out to Gerald Packard, who's the cinematographer of this season so far. Man, some of the visuals in this show are just so beautiful because it's done in Canada. We have this Western feel, a lot of this, and they like to, film in the wintertime. The snow and the angles are just so beautiful. Like the Gardner house, seeing it just like isolated on this cloud, almost like a mist of snow, is always so beautiful. And, Doc's red car that he got, which is like super cute as opposed to that ugly ass pink one he had. That hot red to the background of the white, and then Doc's new kind of blue color palette in his wardrobe and stuff. It looks so good. And I think they're just really making some great moments. Even seeing the faction, like when they were leaving after they're like, it is done, whatever. Watching them walk away, all that stuff is just so, there's just a really nice eye that he has this particular season. It was a different cinematographer, I do believe, last season, which was lovely as well. But this one, man, they're going for those real nice long shots, and I just really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to that because it's just something that's like eye porn that we don't even, it's just like for our visual synapses to fire on. And I really appreciate that.
I would like to say I really appreciated costuming in this episode. Doc and the addition of jeans, very, very sexy. I also really I loved the bubonic plague mask. They used to put pollen in the front of the nose of that plague mask because it was believed that if you inhaled, that the disease was airborne, and if you inhaled, you could get like the smallpox.
Yeah, and that's where we get Ring Around the Rosies and all that stuff, that little nursery rhyme and all that.
It's the creepiest thing, and I love the addition of that, and I like that they had the really good job on the costume there.
It also, this has nothing to do with that, but it also kind of reminds me of Beetlejuice with the long nose and yeah, you know what I'm saying, that the big eyes, and that's kind of what it reminded me of. All right, so going on to Nicole and her storyline, which is, I just love it. Thank you for writing a character who, yes, she turned out to be the love interest, and then guess what? She has a freaking life. I love the fact that this poor officer, can we just talk about her outfit? Mazel tov to the new costume change. Love it.
Only I just wish they'd bring the hat back.
True. Can we get a black Stetson? That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yes, black Stetson. Or even a brown one. I don't mind. I'm not choosy.
Doc has a hat, she should have a hat.
There should be 2 hats in this household. I really like the fact that Nicole is on this journey. I don't think she realizes that she's on a journey for herself. Yeah, she's all about Wynonna and Waverly and all the other stuff, but man, not only does she get knocked through glass every episode, poor child, she's going through an emotional journey that I think is so nuanced, but like awesome. Her and Wynonna's relationship is so fun and jacked up all at the same time. To love the same person and care about them, to have met as, for the most part, friends or acquaintances before you started dating, this sibling. And then when you're dating, like, still have this weird contention. Like, there's really no reason for Wynonna to dislike Nicole other than, like, maybe she's too happy, or, like, maybe she's too friendly, or too, as she says, Miss Percy or whatever, But it's just, I don't know. I just really like that their thing.
What I like about these two women in their contention, I really love the conflict between them. I love that it's become snippy and almost to the point of just way mean and unnecessary. But what I like is that when they insult each other, we as an audience learn something new about that character. We see the character through a new perspective. So it's like when, like Wynonna, she thinks Nicole is uppity and, self-righteous. And Nicole, she thinks Wynonna is an alcoholic and bitter in a way. And it's getting getting uglier each week. And I really love that because it creates such conflict for Waverly, Wynonna, Nicole. It's just a conflict ball, and we just get to watch it being thrown.
Well, I like the fact that, like you said, it is getting a little meaner. There's a few jabs here and there in the beginning that were like, underhanded. Oh, you are just mad because you're in Black Badge. What? Even in the beginning, she's like, oh, I slept with Doc Holliday. You're surprised? It's just like there's always something that Nicole, being silent, has observed. Having that line where she's like, I really don't like you when you drink before 12. And you drink before 12 all the time. So pretty much she never likes her attitude, And Nicole always has a way to come back at Wynonna, which I find fascinating. Yes, Wynonna could be like, you're snippy. She's like, well, you're an alcoholic. You're a freaking princess. She's like, well, you're a pain in my ass. There's always going to be that because, let's be honest, if Nicole and Wynonna were in the same class, they wouldn't talk to each other. Chances are Wynonna would probably torture Nicole, because it'd be fun and easy. The thing is, Nicole has a bigger backbone than I think Wynonna gives her credit for.
I just think exactly. And also, I agree with everything you said right now. I think it was great. And actually, I feel like to speak further to that, I think they're so smart to create this conflict in the show. And it reminds me a little bit of Supergirl and what they were doing with Maggie and Kara. But it's just here, it's done so much more better. And it's such a slower draw that I can't wait to see where this goes.
Exactly. And in this episode, it really does show Nicole's insecurities about their relationship with Waverly. And I think the confidence that we saw in season 1 and, she's hitting on this girl and very confident comes because Nicole is confident in herself. But when it comes to another person, it's a little tricky. She is confident that Waverly likes her. She's confident that she likes Waverly, but she's not really confident that Waverly might want to forever choose Nicole. Her biggest thing was always, oh, I don't want you to be something you're not. I don't want you to act like something you don't want to be, I want you to be you. And
so she's not, just to ask you a question, she's not confident in the longevity of the relationship.
Not necessarily that. I think it's, right now, she's not confident in where Waverly is in finding herself in her journey. Waverly doesn't know if she's an Earp. Waverly's this new out kind of bisexual girl. First relationship with a woman. Everything's so new. And for the record, they've only been dating for about 2 months. So everything's so new that Nicole's like, I'm confident in me, but, Gooverly was acting up. Wynonna's saying snarky things. It's putting a lot of doubt in her mind that I don't think she had to begin with. But now she's starting to get through all these other things, And I think that that's going to be a journey for her to figure out, can she trust everything solidly? Are her feelings real and blah, blah, blah. A lot of people are like, oh, when are they going to say I love you to each other? I love you. Because, Waverly said she loves her in the very, last season. And Nicole, alludes to it. Wynonna goes, you guys love each other. Why don't you save her? And, you love her, save her. But they haven't said it to each other. So everybody else knows that's the case. But they need to figure it out. And I think that's the journey we're on. They're just in the middle of figuring it out, And I'm just really kind of ready for Nicole to stop being pushed through glass and knocked over. And because I feel like she's kind of like the punching bag right now. The unnecessary punching bag, that's kind of necessary. I don't mind her getting pushed around and toughened up. That's what it feels like they're doing to Nicole. It feels like they're toughening her up. Waverly had the goo. Waverly has the sister issues. Waverly might not be an Earp. She has a lot of stuff that's going to harden her as a person. Nicole doesn't. She couldn't get in Black Badge. That was about the only thing that's a bummer to her life. So right now I feel like a lot of the jabs and insecurities are going to toughen her up on purpose.
Or they're going to cause her to unravel.
Who knows? You know what I'm saying? And I do believe a long time ago, Kate had said in an interview, we haven't seen Nicole lose it yet. And what does that look like? What does that mean? Nicole losing it, is it because Nicole was under attack, or is she going to lose it because, let's say, Waverly's under attack? I think we're going to find a lot of that breaking point with the Gardner storyline and Tucker. I think that Nicole's breaking point and her anger is going to be showcased full effect with Tucker. I think she's really being toughened up for that moment. Go ahead.
That's I was gonna say I really agree with all of that. I just want to speak to the Waverly and Wynonna and that last scene that we saw. You had a lovely point you brought up.
Oh yeah, the very end. I like the fact that the goo chose. Well, not the goo chose, but Waverly was kind of chosen to be the first one to know about Wynonna's pregnancy. I think that it just kind of showcases the bond between them and how important each other is to one another. The fact that Waverly's like, it talked. The fact that the goo was talking to Waverly, when she was inside of it again, and I think that was really kind of interesting. That it was like, hey, she was too crowded and blah blah blah. Like, they had a conversation. She was able to remember that, and that also showcased Waverly's strength. And when she shows up with the bag and, she's so supportive and she's there, it was so strong, and it was such a great connection. It was very reminiscent, and a lot of people said, of Frozen. Even though people were kind of mimicking, like, oh, it's Frozen, do you want to build a snowman? I thought it was so perfect, because even in that movie, as much as we can't stand it, it showcased two powerfully connected sisters who were there for each other in their darkest time. It was that showing of the little sister looking up to the big sister going, I am always here. I've got your back. You're not alone. You're gonna be fine. We're gonna get through this together. Don't shut me out. And that complete, I think it's almost like a frame by frame, and the same idea of, like, you can see Frozen and then door to door you can see Wynonna, and it just really hit home in that same place, at least for me.
I thought that it was really, I thought it was great to end the entire episode with the women and the revelation that Wynonna is in fact pregnant. Just opened all sorts of questions, and it kind of imploded everything else in the episode. It was like, it was such a huge discovery that almost everything else became just not as a big deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It just like, it was like a giant explosion at the very end, and then I'm like, oh, we have a crater. Well, and so, and it made me really rethink it. And I was like, well, what if, you have this awesome love triangle, and, the big question is who the baby daddy is, and that's going to probably be, like, on all of our minds for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's like, who's the baby daddy? Is it a human baby? How'd you get pregnant? Who's you fucking? Like, what's going on, And
wait, Adair, question. Right now, who's the baby daddy for you? In your brain, at this moment, who's the baby daddy?
I think it's not Doc or Dolls, to be honest.
I'm going to throw the crater in, okay? This is my thought on who it is. Bobo.
That's so random.
I feel like that's what this show does. It takes the furthest thought you could possibly have and make it a reality.
No, the furthest thought would be JC or Juan Carlos, baby. That's
okay. I would say I'd love it to be a Doc baby, because I love that emotional support. But also, I'm kind of weirded out by, once again, Doc being this old-ass guy who knew her great-great-grandfather, sleeping with his great-great-best friends.
Yeah, exactly. And I know it's not Dolls, because even the Goose says he hasn't seen her naked. He hasn't been with her. So it's gonna be either Doc or something else. So we gonna find out. I thought this was a great episode. I'm so excited we finally got to talk about it and just bring it to light. So what do you guys think out there? Let us know. How'd you really react to it? Are you excited for tomorrow and the upcoming episodes? We're halfway done after tomorrow, and it's exciting. And real quick, I just wanted to say kudos to the Sci-Fi Channel and this particular production company. When Melanie came up and said, hey, look, I'm pregnant, I am expecting and I'm terrified. Oh my God, don't fire me. You know, the fact that they were on board and said, yeah, let's go with this storyline. Let's make our lead character this lead actress who is pregnant. Let's not hide her behind bags and hide her behind, a bunch of jackets necessarily. Let's put her up there. She's going to be pregnant. And so the rest of this episode, the season, we see her pregnant. It's not a matter of like, we're hiding Wynonna's pregnancy. No, we're going to see it. And I think that is so strong as a network. And as an actress, it's like, thank you. You know, if somebody gets knocked up, it's not the end of their career. And I think that is so awesome because that is a real fear as a female actress. You know, you don't want to get pregnant. You don't want to get, something too early. You have to always plan around a family, and a family's not always plannable. So I really, really, really just think it's absolutely fantastic that they did that. So if you guys want to discuss that and talk to us, make sure you hit us up on Twitter. Our handle is whatabout_dat. Jen?
Yeah, we just recorded an extra little bonus feature where if you like talking about ships and you want to talk ships with us, we have a sub podcast coming out, Way Hot in Sandverse. If you want to hear us talk about that for an extended period of time, tune in. That should be debuting this week.
Actually, it's already out on our iTunes, so make sure you guys check that out. Our link will be below, and on our SoundCloud. So if you want to hear that ahead of time, the YouTube video will be out probably later tonight or tomorrow. So hope you guys have a great one. Yes.
Be sure to put us in your ears.
Yes.
At iTunes.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.